the only advice I can really give to kids that are interested in being professional cyclists is to try to remember why it is that they enjoy it. Because any professional sport, if I may, and this is conjecture on my part, but I believe any professional sport becomes something other than what it starts out being when you're a kid. So it always becomes more complex, and there's politics and there's other things that come with it. But if you can somehow focus on remembering why it was that you enjoyed it in the first place, in light of those decisions that you have to make along the way, I think it's easier to not get caught up in making poor decisions. But again, I don't know that I'm the guy that should be the face of that change.
I think I'll take issue with Floyd there. I think you are an example, and I think you're the best example that I've seen for young riders to know that yes, you can be incredibly talented, but you can make bad decisions. And I think you're a light now to guide them when they're faced with that temptation, to see what it can lead to. And I think the most important thing you've done is also give them a role model on how they should behave if they find themselves in that situation. And as a full-time anti-doping researcher, I'll say on the record that the conversations and the frank exchanges that I've had with Floyd in the past couple of days have helped me and will continue to help me to develop strategies to fight doping in sport. So not only has he set an example to the riders, but he is helping already to address that problem. So all due respect, Floyd, I think you are an example, and again I applaud you in public for taking the stance you have.
Verner, did you want to say something?
Well, yes, just a comment to Floyd's admission here. I think that one of the most admirable things by Floyd's coming forward is that he actually showed the magnitude of the problem. He has not been the first to do that. Previously, we have had people like, for instance, Jörg Jaxe coming forward saying that, well, when I was riding, I rode in 6 teams, and in all 6 teams, doping was right and systematic. And these guys who come forward presenting these things, the way that they are received by those who are running the shows, the leaders of the sport, the vilification of them, the belittling of them, they're being called persons without credibility and all that. That response seems to me to be the best of evidence that so long as we have the management in place that we have now in cycling, there is no way forward.
So, question at the back. Good comment. Okay, prepare yourselves. I'm going to say 2 more questions.
Hi, thanks. My name is Brian Cookson. I'm the president of British Cycling.
Oh, welcome. I was looking for you before.
Thanks. My comments are as a private individual, therefore. I just want to take issue with 1 or 2 things that have been said there. I mean, the last speaker there, I'm astonished at that comment, having heard his apology for Michael Rasmussen earlier on this afternoon. I think that's a bit rich, frankly. Having spent most of the last year watching professional cycling and having seen a clear change in the performance levels of riders that to me indicates that the biological passport is working, that the UCI's anti-doping efforts are working, despite the flaws in the system, I'm very optimistic about the future for cycling. And I think there's a danger that some of the speakers in this conference have presented a very negative impression of the way that things are going in cycling. To me, things are getting much, much better. We've seen a much more realistic set of performances in the Grand, excuse me, in the Grand Tours in particular this year. We haven't seen riders like, say, Di Luca finishing and winning a Giro d'Italia stage at the top of a hill, and yet being interviewed immediately after the finish and hardly being out of breath. We haven't seen that sort of thing. We haven't seen the 100-mile lone breakaways to win stages in Grand Tours, as Floyd demonstrated when he is now admitted he was doping. So we've seen a much more realistic set of performances this year, I would suggest. So I'm much more optimistic than the picture that has been given by a number of speakers. And I would also just like to say, I think that there's been some misinformation said about what the nature of the UCI is as well. The UCI is owned by the national federations, so everybody who's a member of a national federation, as many people in this room will be, have a stake in the UCI. It's a difficult democratic system, but it is a democratic system. And I think there have been some unnecessary slurs made against the UCI this afternoon. I don't think it's a perfect body. I do think that it is doing a responsible job. I do take issue with Mr. Drapac's comment that it doesn't act in the best interest of the sport. I think that's frankly outrageous. And I think things are much more optimistic than has been said by a number of speakers. Thank you.
Brian, one response is, I've talked to a lot of people about the perception of the change of performance of this year's Tour de France. And if we accept that that's the case, and a lot of us really enjoyed the race for some of those reasons, are you really convinced that that has come about because of the biological passport and the work of the UCI? It seems from the people I've spoken to in cycling, it was an exercise in risk management. The fear of God had been put into people by the US investigation, and this was what caused the change. So we spoke yesterday at length about the biological passport, and we had a long discussion, and we know that there is this line that the passport's, there's been this great change, has affected all these changes, but there is, what we discussed yesterday, were a number of serious flaws in the passport system which need addressing. And when we try to have these conversations with people in cycling, the door is closed immediately. So I understand that our report is entitled Beyond I Wish I Was 21 Now, because we accept there has been changes in the way that things have done. But we think we're not convinced that that is sustainable in a system where people are not able to have a voice. And what we've been trying to do here, with, for example, the statement that I read out earlier, was to try and give some of those people a voice that they don't feel that they have as members of federations at the moment. But